Yeah,
Hello and welcome back to another episode of the Finally Quit Porn podcast. Welcome back, Mary Paulus. How you doing today? You good?
I'm doing good. How are you doing?
Yeah, I'm doing good, thank you. I'm doing good. So what we'll do in this episode is we'll start off by sharing some really powerful stuff from a client that we had this week. And I really do think this will help other people as well, because essentially he had a bit of what's it called when you got like why is the word just gone from my mind? He had a light bulb moment.
Epiphany.
Yeah, an epiphany. That's a good one as well.
Yeah,
Yeah, I was
an
thinking light bulb,
epiphany.
but
Well,
yeah,
it's the light bulb emoji.
yeah, literally.
Yes.
Uh,
Yeah.
so this was really good for him, and I want to share it with others, so hopefully they can kind of go, "Oh yeah, that makes sense." So he wrote, "I'm finished with phase two." So we have like three phases in our program, and he just watched phase two, and he wrote, "Treat the desire, not the reasons." Fact two. We will always have the moment of choice. Everything prior, the reasons, the triggers, etc., they all lead to a singular moment of choice. If you treat a reason, the compulsive wiring is still there. Treat a trigger, and the wiring is still there. In fact, most likely, the effects of addiction themselves become reasons for the compulsive behavior. I can certainly relate to that. And then I was amazed, brackets, not surprised, to learn that the only thing you can get out of engaging is temporary relief from uncomfortable feelings. That comparison of get versus give up was a real eye opener. I have a dependency with a mind mood altering experience. Yikes. That's it though. It's all psychological. Totally makes sense from my experiences. The addictive part of the mind is only doing one thing, trying to convince me to engage via junky thinking, any justification you use to engage. We need to recognize it and correct it. I really like this. And I think since we started, I already have experienced that even just recognizing it starts to disempower it, the man behind the curtain. So, fact three, this is a reminder of the reality. There is no compromise, there is no cutting back slowly. Relapses aren't normal. This isn't a psychological addiction. It's all, no, he wrote, this isn't a physical addiction. It's all psychological,
Yeah.
even just once. And the addictive mind is back in control in the game of tug of war. We need to learn our way out of this by thinking. The script is the conduit to follow. Practice it to the point of instinct. Then it's no longer a compulsion, it's a choice, freedom. And I drafted my remember letter and benefits list. So yeah. Oh, and then he's wrote,
Yeah.
he's used your word there, and then he's wrote, wow, today feels like an epiphany. You're absolutely right. It's all about the choice. We are making this a choice, no longer a compulsion. True freedom, the script guide us through the choice. That was such an awesome message. That's like one of the best messages we've had since we,
I love it. I
yeah.
love that. Thinking your way out of this compulsion, right? Yeah, rather than distracting your way out of it or whatever. Oh, I love it. That is so good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just
Yeah.
I think there's so much in there where he's gone, and it was the same as me, like the exact same response where he's gone, whoa, I can now see why everything I tried for 10 years didn't work. Because what people do when they're trying to quit porn is they're always looking to treat the triggers. So, oh, there's this emotion, maybe it's loneliness, sadness, anxiety, frustration with yourself, you're feeling low in confidence, it's all of those sort of things, and you go, that's the problem. That's what's leading me to porn. I need to fix that. And you go around on this like treadmill that you can never press stop on, just trying to like run, run, run. You're trying to find this answer, and you always think you're getting closer and closer. And then you have another setback, and then you're like, right, well, at least I've learned something here. I need to treat this problem next. And then you keep on running and you keep on going and keep going, and it just goes round and round in circles. This is how I see it now. But he's gone, whoa, I can now realize that actually those triggers, that's not the solution. Solving those triggers isn't the solution, because my mind is stuck in a mind mood altering like problem. He's got a dependency on a mind mood altering experience. And so he realized that's the only reason. That's the only reason you ever want to look at porn, is because you at that moment your brain is wired to want porn, and that is so liberating to realize. So I'm really glad that he had that experience this week to sort of open his eyes and go, yeah, I need to just deal with the wired brain correctly and rewire effectively, which you can do with the script, and you always have that choice to do it with the script. So yeah, it was nice to read. Any
Yeah.
thoughts from you, Mary?
I like where he says there's no cutting back slowly. Relapses aren't normal. When it's, that whole compassion thing, where it's like you gotta like be gentle with yourself and be kind if you relapse, if you engage. And it's like, rather than teaching people this is not part of the process. Well, it can be part of the process if you want to continue to relapse and relapse, right? Then it's part of the relapse process, but the engaging is like that's the first step off the cliff. It's like then they're whoosh, there you go. And I'm just really glad to see that in the phases and the videos that it's coming across to someone and they're really beginning to understand that idea, that addiction, it's not part of the journey or part of recovery when you engage, because the addictive part of the mind will use anything it can.
Yeah.
It's going to use that. Oh, this is just part of it, or I'm going to learn from this, or I need to be gentle with myself, because I did it. Now don't beat yourself up. Just get back on the wagon, all that kind of stuff. It's like, you're not going to beat yourself up, but before you convince yourself to engage, maybe you beat up the addictive part of your mind. I mean, not literally like beat it up. And also, it's kind of like a subtle distinction, but you don't want to get into battle with it, right? You don't want to battle with the addictive part of your mind. Engaging with the addictive part of your mind doesn't mean getting into a battle, right? It means allowing it to speak and rationally correcting the thoughts, right? Which is very powerful and very effective in changing a neural pathway. You don't want to get into battle with it, because that seems like resistance, rather than just going, okay, bring it on, whatever you got to try to convince me that this is a good idea to engage. Well, hold the bus. I am so clear. I have all this documentation I've done in this program, clearly stating what it means if that's the choice I make in this moment. So
Yeah, you know what it makes me think of? Imagine you have a child and they're like 5 years old and they have the thought of, we'll use the classic analogy that we have. They have the thought of, right, I'm going to put this knife in the electric socket over there.
yeah,
And they say that thought out loud, like, oh, Dad, I want to put that knife in that electric socket. Like, I don't know why the 5-year-old would ever say or think that, but just
yeah,
hypothetically,
yeah,
if they
yeah.
did, and you as
They
a dad
might.
was, you as a dad was just like, okay, well, that's okay. Thoughts are thoughts. As long as you don't do it, no problem.
Yeah,
And we had a guy literally 2 days ago, I think it was, and he
yeah,
said, I've got really good at starting to notice my thoughts as just thoughts. And I've got this kind of practice of detaching from the thoughts a little bit. And that's really working. And I can use this sort of method of just detaching from the thoughts alongside the program. And straight away, you were like, no, like, you're not
yeah.
going to do that. And then I chipped in and I was like, yeah, Mary's absolutely right. We can't be doing that, because we can't just detach from a thought that's faulty. We have to actually change the thought as well. So it's like you go back to that 5-year-old and you're like,
Yeah.
no, do not put that knife in that electric socket,
And
because
here's
this is what's
why.
going to happen. Yeah, exactly. You tell them very, very clearly, this is what's going to happen. You can't do that. Oh,
Yeah.
well, you can
Or
do
you
that,
can
but
do it, but this is
yeah,
what's
yeah.
gonna happen if you
These,
do.
these are the consequences. So
Yeah,
that's what you need if you want to overcome porn addiction, is you need to think through the consequences before you do it. And a lot of people, when they're in addiction, just like myself, for 10 years, is you can't think rationally about the consequences when you have that compulsive desire, because all you're thinking is there's like this battle going on in your mind. It's
yeah,
like, I want to do
yeah,
it, I want to stop, I want to do it, I want to stop. And you're just going from
yeah,
one to the other really fast,
yeah,
like trying to kind of resist. I'm gonna stop, I can't do it, I can't do it. And you
yeah,
don't have that choice. So you can't even really have that conscious awareness of, actually, I can do this, but here are the extreme consequences, and actually think that through and then make a
yeah.
choice in that moment.
Well, and too, that message about the being taught to notice your thoughts, It's all this kind, oh, just notice it. Thoughts are just thoughts, and la la la, and we're just going to manifest our new reality and all this kind of whatever. I'm sorry, it might not have been that, but this teaching people that thoughts are just thoughts, and just to be like passive and let them go by, let them float by, whatever. No, if you're passive with the addictive part of the mind, no, not going to work. It's
Mm,
like you need to write it down for starters. Don't just notice it and let it float by, because the addictive part of the mind, it you'll have the thoughts and they'll be super fleeting, and that is like an intentional ploy by the addictive part of the mind. So it's like it's strengthening that pathway, and you seemingly don't even notice. That's why I tell the guys, like, you have a junky thought, write it down quickly, write it down in the moment, because it goes by so fast that you can't correct it. And it's like, oh, what was that thought again? Write it down right away so that you can be very like not passive about it. I mean, quite the opposite, intentionally write it down and correct that thought, because thoughts are not just thoughts. When they're junky thoughts, they need to be treated. And
mm,
this whole idea of sticking the knife, kids sticking the knife in the electric socket or whatever, there was a girl at work who, her son, for some reason, I think it's because she was going to leave, she pulled him early out of his art class, and she brought him in the office, and he is like wailing. He's just pissed. I want to go back, I want to go back, I want to go back. And she kept on saying, you can't go back. You can't go back. We have to go. You can't go back. And the more she told him he can't go back, the louder he screamed. And we're all like trying to work, and he's just wailing, and then she's like dragging him out of the office, out of the building, you can't go back. Screaming louder and louder. And I'm thinking, maybe you should just say to him, you want to go back. You
mm,
really want to go back, and just keep repeating and validating the fact and acknowledging that, yeah, you want to go back.
mm.
And then maybe he'll shut up for a second and listen to something rational, like, you'll be able to go another time. Right now, we need to go do la la la, whatever, but the more she told him, you can't go back, you can't go back, the louder he screamed, you know.
Yeah, it's an interesting
Yeah.
one because I was doing Samaritans last night. So it's like the volunteering that I do, where you talk to people from all over the UK and they have all kinds of challenges with maybe their mental health. And in our training, one of the main things that we are taught is about reflecting back to them how they feel and validating sometimes how they feel. So I know with the addiction, we don't validate how people feel, but I think actually accepting and acknowledging and reflecting back to people, yeah, you want to look at porn. That has a
Yeah.
lot of merit. Like that's valuable. Like, yeah, of course you want to look at porn. You're in this
Yeah.
addiction right now. Your brain's been wired to want porn and that's okay. And there's nothing wrong with you for that. But so often
Yeah.
people will try and get away from that desire and get away from that wanting and not acknowledge it. But actually with the guys that we talk to, we're like, yeah, of course you want to look at porn, of course you do, and
Yeah.
it's okay
And
that you,
acknowledge it first before you can
yeah,
reroute it.
yeah, and to be honest with you, it's okay to want it like in the early stages of the program, like that's what we'd expect, like it's 100% okay, and it will be for as long as they rewire their brain, but it's what you do with that wanting that matters. Because just because you want something doesn't mean you have to do it. The other thing I found really interesting this week actually was the thing on someone thinking they didn't have the choice that they did actually have. So this may have been someone sort of in the middle of the night who had woken up really horny, had these urges, and it felt almost automatic. And there wasn't this like conscious space between them thinking like, I want to engage and then actually engaging. And I think that's really common for a lot of people. And you changed the way in which they thought by going back to them and being like, well, actually, you do have a choice. You're not helpless. And that's another
Yeah.
ploy by the addicted part of the
Yeah.
mind. Like the addicted part of the mind for me in the past, it would always be like, right, it's sort of too late now. You have to engage. You're already
Yeah.
sort of started. And there's all these ploys and ways in which the addicted part of
Yeah.
the mind will get you spinning out, thinking like, you literally have no choice in it. But that's just what the addictive part of the mind does. Like you always have a choice. And I think we may have said this in the last podcast. I can't remember, but that for me has been a big insight from this program too.
Well, I think that that situation was, there's people always use this term autopilot. I just go on, and several of the guys have used it. It's like I just go on autopilot. Okay, so you wake up in the middle of the night, horny, whatever. Maybe you start in a dream state. You start masturbating, whatever. You don't even realize, you're not even totally conscious because you're in a dream state. Well, that's not going to necessarily do damage. But once you wake up, that's there is a moment where you go, oh, okay, this is what's happening here. And if you can, the addictive part of the mind will convince you, oh, it's on autopilot, I already started, because it wants it, right? Yeah. And the brain will try to go on autopilot, but it's like it's your job to turn autopilot off. I mean, it's like autopilot has a switch. It doesn't just happen. People turn autopilot on, you can turn autopilot off by using your script and engaging with the desire and sending it in a different direction. I mean, autopilot is just like, oh, flip the switch and there it goes, right? But
Yeah.
it's just basically giving into the addiction. If you say, oh, it's just autopilot, well, if you don't have any control over your desires, well, maybe, you need to be locked up or something. I mean, it's like if you really truly don't have any control and, and you just go on autopilot, well, that could have some really horrible consequences.
Yeah, well, it's a self-fulfilling prophecy, really. If you think you don't have any, well, it's like rational emotive therapy. It's thoughts create feelings, feelings create actions. If you think in your mind that you go on autopilot and you don't have control over yourself, what's going to happen is you're going to feel like you don't have control over yourself. If you feel like you don't have control over yourself, you're going to act like you don't have control over yourself. You always have control over yourself. That's the reality. And I was talking to a guy last night and he really, really didn't have control over himself. He was in solitary confinement actually he was in prison, and yeah, he had done some horrible, horrible crimes. And that's like actually not having control over yourself. But that's so, so rare. If you're going through a porn addiction, you're not in solitary confinement. You might feel like you are in your mind, but you're not. You're actually free and you always have a choice. And you're not some weird person for having desire to look at porn. You're literally in the majority right now of men, and you're just in the rare exception that you've chosen to actually find freedom. And that's why you're listening to this. And that's something to be proud of. The other thing I want to talk about when it comes to sleeping, and this is an interesting one, and that I was telling you about earlier in the week, Mary. Probably a bit too much information. And the funny thing with this is, I was in the office, and right, so basically, well, the backstory is it's like 5 a.m. I wake up, and honestly, in my head, my penis was on my hand. Like my hand was around my penis. I was masturbating. I was looking at porn, and I was thinking about my script. That's not good. Like that's withdrawal. It's like peak. That's what's
That's
going on in
good
my.
though. It's good. Your mind's working it out. Yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah. No, it's weird.
Relapse dreams are common. Yeah.
So I'm having this
The
crazy.
dream.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
yeah, go
So
ahead.
so I wake up and I'm like, geez, like that was so weird. But I was also kind of relieved because I was like, well, at least I haven't just relapsed, But I was fully like masturbating, looking at porn in this dream. And I wake up at 5 a.m. and then I just have so much like energy in my body because I don't think I'd like fully released sexually. And so I had all this like energy in my body. But the point I first wanted to make was that one, wet dreams do happen, especially if you're going through withdrawal. For a lot of people, they will happen. And I want to really just get this message out there that look, you do not need to masturbate and look at porn in particular, but you don't even need to masturbate. So many people think you need to masturbate to like release sexually. You really just don't. Like that will just happen in a dream, like it did for me. And to me, that's just part of withdrawal. But yeah, then I go into the office and I think someone said to me at some point, like, you're right. And I was like, yeah, I'm okay today, but I'm just feeling so, so tired. I was up since 5 a.m. and they were like, oh, what have you been doing up? Like, why did you wake up at 5 a.m.? And I was like, well, I didn't mean to. I didn't wake up on purpose. And they were like,
Yeah.
okay, well, what happened? And I was like, I think I'll leave that for the podcast, to be honest with you. Like, you can listen if you want, but I'm not going to go advocating people to listen to the podcast in the office. Not
Yeah,
just yet
right.
anyway. But anyway, yeah, that was funny. But they kind of worked it out because they know I've got to finally quit porn podcast. So they were like, "Oh, okay, right,
Yeah.
is that what you've been up for?" But you know what?
Yeah.
No, this was actually yesterday that that happened, I think, or maybe the day before.
It was the day before. Yeah.
It was the day before, and yeah, I was
Yeah.
so tired that day, but I did have a lot of still energy in my body. And the thing is, I would much rather wake up at 5 a.m. and then have energy in my body for the rest of the day than like
Yeah.
actually be in addiction. Like being in addiction for me is
Right.
the worst thing possible. I'd honestly rather have 5 hours sleep nowadays than be in addiction. Like the amount of energy you have once you overcome addiction is just crazy. Like I'm always, it's quite late now. I've worked all day, 9 to 5, worked hard,
Yeah.
and then I even stayed and did an extra 2 hours. And then now it's like 8:35. I'm still just full of energy. And like
Yeah.
I think that is partly due to just this mental clarity that you gain from being
Yeah.
free of addiction. And a lot of people waste time in addiction, but I think the main thing's the mental clarity and what's going on mentally and the lack
Well,
of
if you think about it, when people fast, they get a whole lot of mental clarity and a whole lot of extra energy when your body's not processing all the other stuff, fasting can make that happen too. So, well, now of course fasting is like some diet thing, intermittent fasting, when fasting used to be like kind of a spiritual experience that people would do for that mental clarity. Now it's like, oh, all the kinds of intermittent fasting crap. And everybody that, everyone I've come across, all the compulsive eaters that are intermittent fasting, basically, when they're off their fast, they're just binging on everything in sight. It's just, and intermittent fasting for someone who has a compulsive relationship with food, that it couldn't be more destructive. I mean, it's like intermittently reinforcing it all the time and making it worse. And I mean, if you think about it, they call breakfast, if you break the word down, break fast.
Mm.
You fast when you're sleeping. It's kind of a natural process anyway. You break fast when you get up and have breakfast, right? So it's break fast. So it's natural anyway. But they're putting all these mental restrictions on themselves. This is when I can eat. This is when I can't. Then I can eat. And I've seen people just binge like crazy when they're off their fast.
Yeah.
But back to the dreams. When I was working with nicotine addiction, we had people having dreams all the time. I had them myself where I'd wake up and I'd be like, "Oh my God, I smoked." So I really got it, like, because I thought, "Oh my God, it's over. I've relapsed," because so I really understood that and had in my brain that if I smoked, it was over. I was going to relapse. I was going to be a smoker again, so the dreams ended up being really relieving because it'd be like, oh my God, it was a dream. Thank God I didn't do that. And it was almost like to see how afraid I got in my dream that I relapsed, that I was just getting it on a level
Yeah.
that was real important,
Well, the day before yesterday, or the day before that, I can't remember, but the night before I had that wet dream, I was using my script a lot because I was having quite a lot of urges that day, which is rare. I think it might have been a few weeks since I last had an urge, but that day I was just really horny, to be truly honest.
Yeah.
And that's the other thing, like just repeating again, it doesn't have to be some big emotional thing. You can just be horny and like you can
Yeah.
just have the compulsive desire because your mind is addicted, and that's part of this whole thing. So anyway, really horny, use the script multiple times, get through the urges, go to sleep, wake up at 5 a.m. And it was like my mind was, yeah, playing out the option A of actually going and relapsing. And it was
Yeah.
so scary. It
Yeah, right.
honestly, like, it
Good.
felt horrible. Yeah. And the weird thing is, I was
We could
even,
have a phrase, horny happens, like the shit happens bumper sticker. Horny happens, right? So horny happens. It doesn't mean that it has to be about pornography, right?
yeah,
Horny
exactly.
happens. Comes
My
and
friend
goes.
yesterday,
What's that?
my friend yesterday was telling me about Kellogg's, and I don't know if this is true, but he was saying that Kellogg's back in the day, one of the ways they started was there was all these guys who were masturbating way too much apparently, and I
Yeah.
feel like this is probably BS because he's a funny fellow. This guy who was telling me about it. It was in the office again. Actually, he's so funny though. He just always makes me laugh in the office. But yeah, he was telling me how these guys were masturbating all the time, like ages ago, and then Kellogg's was set up, and
What
they
are you
put
saying, Kellogg's?
yeah, you know Kellogg's.
No, what is that? Explain what that is
Oh, sure.
for
I
the
didn't know if
listeners, because I don't know.
that's a good point. If they don't have it in America, then yeah, fair enough. Kellogg's is like cereal, like it's one of the biggest
Oh, okay,
cereals.
got it, got it.
Um,
Kellogg cereal. Okay.
yeah, yeah. So they own loads of cereal, different sort of Special K and all sorts. So
Yep.
yeah, apparently they were putting loads and loads of fiber in the cereal, which would reduce the horniness of the men, and then it would help them stop masturbating so much. So that was used as like a marketing thing, apparently, originally. That must be like, I can't believe that could be true. Like, there's no way that's true, right?
Fiber makes you less horny.
Apparently, yeah.
It's what it make you poop more, but I don't
Yeah,
know
exactly.
about.
That's what I thought. So that's it. I think it was because we were talking about someone else in the office was running a marathon, and then I was sharing this story of this person who I know
Yeah.
who I'm friends with from football who had run a marathon, and halfway through he had shit himself, and then he had to keep on running because there was nowhere to go to the toilet. So he keeps on running and running, and then he gets to the toilet at the end, and he waits in this queue for ages. And he's like shit himself to a way where it's like it's not running down his legs or anything, so it's just like in his pants. So he's in this queue waiting, and he gets to the front of the queue, and he's about to go into like the stall, like the cubicle, so he can finally have a proper shit after like 5 hours of walking and running, and then and then he just and then and then he's
Oh my God. Yeah.
too much. And
Okay.
then the way he tells this story as well is the best. But then just before he's about to go in, he like fully shits himself, like it's like going down his legs and everything, like in front of everyone. Like everyone's in this
Yeah.
queue, like about to go in, and they see that happen. And like the marathon was meant to be like such a special, like good day for him as well.
Yeah.
And when he talks about the story, he honestly just says it's like the well, I mean, pardon the pun, but he genuinely says it's like the shittest day of his life ever. It's just like the
Yeah.
worst day. Felt so sorry for him. But
Yeah.
anyway, back to the point. I don't even know why I was talking about Kellogg's. I imagine
Kellogg's about it's supposed to make you less horny, right?
yeah,
The
yeah,
fiber makes you
yeah.
less horny.
But in my opinion, men are going to be horny, and often it will be the compulsive desire because the brain's just wired in
Yeah.
that way. And that's all right, but it's what you do in those moments, and you've got the choice. And also it's temporary. It's always going to be temporary. Like it comes and then it
Yeah.
goes. And
And I
that's just
think too, for like if you've had a porn addiction, then just natural horniness, horny happens, right? Our new slogan, horny happens. So that could trigger or try to trigger the old pathway. Where the old pathway, when horny would happen in the past, when you're in your porn addiction, it goes to porn, right? That's you act out with the porn. So just realizing that when horny happens, I mean, sometimes you can use your script or whatever. It's never going to hurt to use the script, right? And then you'll just get more clear and more clear. And yeah, yeah, for sure. But I still don't understand how fiber makes people less horny.
yeah, I've not got a clue.
Make you shit your pants for sure. Oh
Honestly,
my God, what a
marketing is
story. That's hilarious.
yeah, marketing is just so wrong. Like the amount of marketing out there just suggesting things. Oh, I'm just so done with it. And you know what else I'm done with lately? Like I was on YouTube last night and I was just scrolling through and I was looking at like videos on porn addiction. I didn't actually watch the videos, but to be truly honest with you, I was trying to figure out, is there any topics that people are particularly interested in? Can we maybe get
Sure.
more views on YouTube, that sort of thing? And I was just like, there is no way I am doing what all these people are doing because a lot of them were actually putting very, in my opinion, sexually provocative photos in the thumbnails as well to get more views. And it's just crazy how people aren't really even calling them out. You know, they're literally trying to hook people with these thumbnails about quitting porn with photos that of like half naked women or women that are actually from porn as well. And I just think it's so wrong. You know, I've had thoughts about doing things like having a podcast with porn stars before, but I actually think part of that was probably the addicted part of my mind, thinking, you know, I want to go talk to some porn stars, and it's
Yeah,
just
right. Yeah.
thinking, yeah, like I told you about the time with like the OnlyFans girls, and I had that junky thought of, oh yeah, I'm just doing some work.
Yeah.
I'm gonna go on OnlyFans and find
Yeah.
somebody to come on the podcast. So I
Yeah.
end up on OnlyFans, like scrolling through all these different
Yeah.
girls, checking them
I'm
out.
just looking for podcast guests.
Oh
That's
yeah,
all.
so innocent, right? So innocent. It's just crazy how the addicted mind works. It'll do anything.
Well, the marketing is obscene. It really is. And the thing is if I wasn't like in the business of really trying to help people, I could go and work, probably make six figures for marketing companies, teaching them how to get people into feelings of deprivation. So they're gonna be more likely to act out and buy the product and act out in their addiction based on deprivation thinking. Like, God, what was it? I was listening to the TV was just on in the background, and it was an ad for, I don't know, some fast food restaurant, and it was like, if something like, if you are you hungry? Well, if you're not, then you can't go get this burger right now. And I was just like, wait a minute, what? It's like, yes, you can, because I mean, my compulsive eaters, they eat all the time when they're not hungry. That's the problem. They just eat all the time, right? So it's like, so they have them with the marketing either way, because it's like, oh, I'm not hungry, I can't go. So then they're like, so then they just start brewing in the feelings of deprivation. Next thing they're going to go, because to get out of the feelings. It's like interesting how they market that stuff, but people will do the most desperate crap, and it makes me the shit in his pants story reminds me of that stuff. It was called, God, it had some weird name that was like, this is your friend type of thing, but basically it was a pill or whatever they took. I don't remember if it was pill form, but some kind of medication. God, what was it called? Had the weirdest name. But anyway, what it did is it made it so that if they ate too much fat content in their food, they would shit their pants, because they wouldn't be able to process the fat and break it down, right? So it put them at danger. So if you overeat, you're going to shit your pants. This was actually a big seller. Like, okay, well, guess what? I bet you a lot of people figured out there was no deprivation, and they probably did shit their pants, because they took that stuff and then they binged on whatever fat food anyway, and shit their pants. But oh my God, how desperate are people if this is a method they're going to use to try to stop overeating?
Yeah. Wow.
God, what was
You
it?
know what
I
you would have
can't remember
got?
what it was called, but
You
I'll
know what
look
you
it
would have
up.
got? You would have got people who would have been like seriously obese, overweight, and they're just there like scranning, like eating some pizza, just sat on the toilet, just like
Yeah, yeah.
waiting for the consequences.
Well,
Yeah.
what's interesting is, with food compulsion, people don't identify compulsive eating as an eating disorder. I don't know if we've talked about this before in the podcast, but I think it's important. Like they say bulimia and anorexia as eating disorders. But when you see someone that's obese, you don't go, oh, they're eating disordered. Now they're like, oh, they have a body type. They just don't exercise and they don't eat healthy. Bullshit. They have an eating disorder. Compulsive eating is an eating disorder.
Hmm.
Bulimia and anorexia are extensions of the same eating disorder. Bulimics try to control the consequences by purging. Anorexics try to control the desire. It's the ultimate in helplessness, because if I go near food at all, if I allow myself to have that desire, I'm going to be out of control. So
Hmm.
that's where anorexics, they try to control the desire, which is futile. Obviously, they die very young, their organs fail. But with bulimics, made me think of it, the shitting the pants part. with bulimics, what happens is if they need to make themselves vomit, purge, right? It's like they have to do it, sticking their fingers down their throat, whatever. But then it becomes easier and easier. But then the problem is whenever they eat, they throw up. They can't stop it. They don't have to make themselves. A couple women I worked with told me this. They're like, that's where they got like super scared. They're like, oh my God, they couldn't eat in public because it comes right back up. So without any provoking it, right? It just automatically, that it became this automatic thing where I eat food and it comes back up. So they have to basically eat at home, where you were saying someone's just sitting on the toilet, just eating and shitting, right? It's
Yeah,
kind
it's
of the
crazy.
idea. The bulimics, they have to eat in where it's they can throw up because it's coming up.
Yeah, it's
Um,
disgusting
and the
that.
other thing too is like bulimia, it's when we were talking before about, the kind of the correlations between compulsive eating and porn, how with food compulsion, even they're real similar. Like you had that friend where you had like really similar junky thinking
Yeah,
and
yeah.
stuff, where with porn, you can't see it, right? You can't go, oh, there's a porn addict, right? You can't, it doesn't show on
No.
the outside. Well, anorexia will, of course, because it's kind of horrifying, really. But bulimia doesn't necessarily show. And it was interesting because a couple of years ago, we were at our summer volleyball and we were playing women's quads. So we have 4 women, right? Well, 2 of our girls couldn't show up, so we pulled in 2 subs. And those 2 subs, both very fit, very attractive looking girls, right?
Yeah.
So afterwards, one of them, we were going to go out for beers or whatever, and one of them said, "Oh, I got to go to work," and I was like, "Oh, what do you do for work?" Blah blah blah, and she's like, "Oh, I do online marketing." Blah blah blah, and she's like, "What do you do?" And I told her just kind of a brief overview, quick overview of Beyond Compulsion and working with food compulsion, and she tears up, right? And I'm like, "What's up?" And she said, "Well, I struggle with bulimia,"
Mm,
right? And so then the other girl that was on my team is talking to the other sub we pulled in,
yeah.
who is telling her the same thing. So afterwards, we're comparing notes. I'm like, oh my God, so and so's bulimic. She's like, oh my God, the other girl told me she's bulimic. So out of 2 subs we pulled in, 2
Wow.
fit, attractive girls, both of them bulimic.
Yeah. No, I
Right?
actually just it makes me sad though because
Yeah.
honestly, like I blame all the messaging that people get on the daily because
Oh,
I think
yeah.
the amount of messaging that people are getting into their brain through marketing, through social media, through films, TV, the
Oh,
whole
yeah.
world, it's all just promoting addiction and people aren't aware of that because they're not aware of how the addicted mind works and they're not aware of deprivation a lot of the time, and it's just horrible. And I don't even think the people in the marketing agencies are aware. I don't think the average person has any clue about any of this stuff really. And
Yeah.
it's hard to like change your mind. Like it's not something you just do overnight. Hopefully people listening to this podcast can kind of listen to these episodes over and over, like new episodes,
Yeah.
not just the same ones, but eventually get to a position where they realize like, yeah, I am the one fully in control of myself. And it's the world that's wrong, not me. I think that's
Yeah.
such a good realization. When you
Yeah.
step away from the world and you take a bit of a break from social media and YouTube and kind of just the modern day marketing capitalism world,
Yeah.
capitalist world, and you just take a step back from it all and you look from a different perspective and you go, you know what? This world's pretty messed up, and I don't really want to be part of that.
Yeah.
I just want to be grateful on my own, maybe have my little close circle, do my bit for the world, try and help people a bit, and just keep on cracking on. If you do that, you're
Yeah.
set. And the other thing is, people don't understand that they have so much more than they need. So I was thinking about this earlier, right? Imagine you have like a recipe. You're trying to make some delicious meal. And I don't know if I've used this analogy before or not, but becoming free of addiction is more about taking things away from the meal instead of continually adding stuff. So I think a lot of content out there, it's like all this information and your mind just gets overloaded with stuff. And it's a bit like you try to make a pizza, but then you keep on adding toppings and toppings and toppings. You get to a point you can't even taste the dough. You can't taste the cheese. You
Yeah,
can't taste
yeah.
the tomato anymore. All you can taste is 1,000 different toppings. So you're just overwhelmed. What you need to do is just strip all
Yeah.
that back and get it really simple again.
My
And
favorite
that's all it is.
pizza is Escape from New York cheese slice. It's like the best sauce, and all it is just a straight, it's thin crust. It's a New York style. It's been in Portland forever. You go in there, the guys are throwing the dough in the air and just, woo, it's cool. And basically a cheese slice from Escape from New York, cheese and the best sauce ever, and dough. That's it. Yeah. Anyway, sorry,
Simple.
go ahead.
No, that's it. That's it. Literally, that's the
Yeah.
point though, is that
Well, and the other thing
yeah.
I wanted to just say, follow up on this whole food compulsion thing. And if anyone wants to go to my website, beyondcompulsion.com, on the philosophy page, I have this article called I Brought Sad Food. And the subtitle is The Obsession with Health, Nutrition, and Fitness, combined with the normalizing of food addiction, guarantees the continued rise in obesity. And the little graphic I have on here is, every diet I go on, I gain the weight back with interest. Now that's that reinforcement, right? Intermittent reinforcement. And if you think about the guys going on the Brain Buddy or NoFap or all this on these streaks, right? Every time I go on a streak, or every time I go on a diet, I gain the weight back with interest. So they're gaining it with interest, the desire to use more porn, more extreme content, et cetera, but you can't see it. But although you might be able to see it on their face when they're looking like they're just not happy, but it doesn't show like someone who's gaining more and more and more weight as they intermittently reinforce their addiction.
Yeah, yeah.
So yeah,
Imagine you had like a stock, like stocks and shares, and what you're doing is that stock's not moving in price, but every single day,
yeah,
or maybe even every like week or two, you're selling that stock for whatever reason, and you buy it back. It's like the commission is gonna increase. Like, you're gonna eventually end up losing a lot of money. It's not something
yeah,
that, I mean, it's
yeah,
just how interest works, really. But
yeah.
that's a terrible analogy. I'll leave it in because I can't be bothered to edit it out. But that is such a bad analogy. Why not just stick with the interest?
Yeah, yeah.
I've taken your
That kind of
analogy.
makes sense,
There
but
you go.
whatever. It's
That's
sort
like
of
me, like
sort of
adding more
sensible.
toppings on the pizza. Though it's like you already had the pizza. You got your
Yeah,
slice, you got your interest ready. I'm just there like sprinkling on all these toppings unnecessarily, trying to change your
yeah,
metaphor. But
yeah,
anyway,
yeah,
yeah, I
exactly.
think we'll
Yeah,
call it a day there for the podcast. We got some other
sure.
videos to make.
Yeah.
But yeah, thank you for watching or listening. I hope you have enjoyed it. We're going to do a workshop if anyone fancies coming along. There's 12 spaces,
Oh yeah.
26th of May. So I will leave a link somewhere in the description. So yeah,
Yeah.
join that if you want to learn more about the Beyond Compulsion method with me and Mary. We're going to cover the fundamentals. We're going to go through the basic dilemma, junkie thinking, and the benefits list, the remember letter, and quite a few other things. So yeah, come along to that if you
Yeah.
fancy it. 12
Yeah, the
spaces.
workshops have been really great and
Yeah.
really positive response from the men that have joined the workshop. So I think we're like working with all of them now. So that's great. Yeah. Love to
Yeah.
see some more faces at the workshop for
Yeah,
sure.
absolutely. So yeah, get involved if you fancy it. Thanks
And
for
it's
watching
coming
on
up a week from Sunday. Is that right?
Sunday, the
Um,
26th of May. Yeah.
Great. Perfect.
And
Look forward to
if you're
that.
listening to this and maybe that workshop's already been, then don't worry, we'll probably be doing one once a month or something like that. Just get in touch with me. My email is tom@finallyquitporn.com. I'll add you to like a waiting list or something if that one's sold out or if it's already passed. So yeah, thanks for watching or listening and have an amazing rest of your day. Bye bye.
Later.